I would like to talk about something of great importance to all who are filled with the desire to help the poor and the needy. This desire is proper, but we must not be deceived nor allow ourselves to be manipulated. We have to study things scientifically. As I have already pointed out, the difference between the poor Robinson Crusoe and the rich Robinson Crusoe lies precisely in that the rich Crusoe has capital goods in the form of savings invested wisely and not invested in a maladjusted fashion. He has at his disposal a well-invested capital good, the stick, which enables him to obtain many other goods, and thus to move forward and increase his quality of life more and more. In contrast, the poor Crusoe does not have a capital good. We can draw the same distinction between a rich nation and a poor nation. What difference is there between the United States and India? Is it that in India people work less and are therefore poorer? No. People in India work as much as people in the United States, if not more. Is it that the people of India have less technological know-how than the Americans or the Swiss? No, they have the same. In fact, Indian technicians are the best in the world. The difference between a wealthy nation and a poor nation lies exclusively in one thing. The wealthy nation has many more capital goods wisely invested than the poor nation. In India, farmers are still using 2 cows and a Roman plough, while in the United States, a man with a tractor and a computer achieves 1,000 times as much as an Indian worker. He is 1,000 times as productive because he has a tractor and the other worker does not. The rich Robinson Crusoe has a stick and the poor Robinson Crusoe works by hand. If you work by hand and you are very close to consumption, you are very poor. If you have many intermediate stages, computers, machines, tractors, etc., you can increase production 1,000-fold, and much more than 1,000-fold, and be much richer. That is the difference between a wealthy country and a poor country. So, to be prosperous, who should we encourage? The answer is clear: capitalists. The only way to escape from poverty is to foster saving, protect capitalists, and establish a system in which private property is respected and entrepreneurial creativity is encouraged, along with the suitable investment of saving in capital goods. A country that harasses savers and capitalists is a country condemned to poverty. A country that fosters saving, respect for private property, and the accumulation of capital goods is a country that finds its way out of poverty, and in just a few generations can be at the forefront of economic development. Notice that we live in a world completely inundated with demagogy. What do we hear? All right, let's take a democratic vote. Okay, now who votes in favor of doubling salaries and cutting work in half? If we took that democratic vote, what do you think the result would be? In favor. Well, since we must be democratic, suppose we did that. If we put it into practice, do you think the country would be richer or poorer? Infinitely poorer. A process of social cooperation cannot depend on democratic principles. If it did, the process would be destroyed. Notice that demagogy is always detrimental to the very people demagogues claim to defend. A month from now, I will explain that in the market there is a law of tendency, according to which each worker tends to be paid the value of his or her contribution to the process of production. Of course, a worker who works with bare hands or with a Roman plough contributes very little, and therefore earns very little. Such is the case of the Indian labourer. Someone who works with computers or a tractor produces a great deal. That worker is very productive, and therefore earns a large amount. The only way to help the working classes and the poorest is to provide them with capital goods saved by capitalists. To do this, it is essential to first foster saving, protect capitalists, and establish an institutional framework that encourages the proper long-term investment of savings in increasingly productive capital goods. This is economic science. From now on, you will have to interpret the world around you in a manner diametrically opposite to the way it is usually presented. For if everything were simply a question of voluntarism or do-goodism, we must take from the rich and give to the poor. Let us consider this example. All right, What we need to do here is take from the rich and give to the poor so that we can all be richer. This is the triumph of the philosophy of the grasshopper over the philosophy of the ant. Capitalists own all of these capital goods. Suppose we expropriate them and give them all to the workers. The workers immediately consume them because they want a higher living standard. And what happens then? They consume the capital. These stages disappear, and people end up condemned to poverty. The redistribution of income leads to poverty. Wealth derives from saving and the accumulation of capital goods. Multimillionaires cannot eat 1,000 steaks a day or have 1,000 Rolls Royces. They can eat the best meat and have a luxury car and the best homes, but the rest of what they own consists of capital goods which have been saved, and therefore placed at the disposal of workers, whose productivity increases, and whose wages increase in turn. Think of the well-known story about March, the famous Spanish Mallorcan millionaire, who with his fortune established the Juan March Foundation. During the Spanish Civil War, a protest was staged at his house. "You are a millionaire, and we demand that you divide up your fortune and share it with us." "Well, how much do you think I have?" "You have 300 million pesetas." 300 million pesetas? How many of you are there here at the protest? 1,000. Okay, great. If we divide 300 million pesetas among 30 million Spaniards, each one gets 10 pesetas. Give each of the 1,000 protesters 10 pesetas and ask them to leave. However, if all Spanish people had been there, and he had given each one 10 pesetas, this man's fortune would have disappeared. But at the same time, they would have destroyed the country. Instead of postponing consumption in the form of capital goods, they would have consumed the capital. They would have consumed the wooden stick, and their future living standard would have dropped as a result.